ವಿರೂಪಾಕ್ಷ್ ಒಂದು ಇನ್ವಿಟೇಷನ್ ಹಾಕಿ. ವಿರೂಪಾಕ್ಷ ಅವ್ರೆ, ಇದು ತೆಗೆದ್ಬಿಡಿ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಜಾಯ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಮೇಡಮ್. ವಿರೂಪಾಕ್ಷ ಇದು ತೆಗೆದ್ಬಿಡಿ ಇನ್ವಿಟೇಷನ್.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಈಗ ಆದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ತೆಗೆದ್ಬಿಡಿ.
ಸರಿ ಸರ್.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕುಕ್ಟೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವ್ರು ಏನಿದ್ದಾರೆ? ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಕೋಸ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ.
ಸುಧಾ ಬೋಸ್ ಯಾರು?
ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕೋಕ್ಟೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅಂತ ಸರ್.
ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಕೊಟ್ರಿ ನೋಡಿ.
ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೋಸ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಸರ್, ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ.
ಓಕೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೆ ನೋಡಿ.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಮೇಡಮ್?
ಆರಾಮ್ ಸರ್.
ಹೌದು ಮೇಡಮ್, ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಕನ್ನಡ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಮತ್ತು ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ವಿಭಾಗವು ಕಳೆದ 5 ದಿನಗಳಿಂದ ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿರುವಂತಹ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಸಮಾಜ ವಿಭಿನ್ನ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನಗಳು ಎಂಬ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷತೆಯನ್ನು ವಹಿಸಿದಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಾದಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಡಿ ವಿ ಪರಮಶಿವಮೂರ್ತಿ ಸರ್ ಅವರೇ, ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಆಡಳಿತಾತ್ಮಕ ಮತ್ತು ಸಕಲ ನೆರವನ್ನ ನೀಡುತ್ತಿರುವಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಟಿ ಪಿ ವಿಜಯ ಸರ್ ಅವರೇ, ಮತ್ತು ಇವತ್ತು ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡಲಿರುವ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾದಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕೋಕ್ಟೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರೇ, ಮತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರೇ, ನಿಕದ ಡೀನರೇ, ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರೇ, ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳೇ, ಹಿರಿಯರೇ ಮತ್ತು ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಆಯೋಜಿಸಲು ಬಹಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನಗಳನ್ನ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಒದಗಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನುವುದು ಒಂದು ಆಶಯ. ಕನ್ನಡ ಅನ್ನುವುದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಭಾಷಿಕ ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನೋಡದೆ ಒಂದು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಮತ್ತು ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರ ಚಿಂತನೆಗಳು ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗ್ರಹಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಅವುಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಅಧ್ಯಯನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಳವಡಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಅವುಗಳ ಮಿತಿಯನ್ನು ಗುರುತಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಡುವ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಯಾವುದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಳ್ಳಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಆ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೊನೆಯ ದಿನ 5ನೇ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನ ಇದೆ. ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ ಅವರ ಬರಹದ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನಗಳನ್ನ ಕುರಿತದ್ದು. ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ ಅವರು ಮೂಲತಃ ಫ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ನವರು, ಆಂಥ್ರೋಪಾಲಜಿಸ್ಟ್, ಮಾನವಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದ. 1950ರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಕ್ಸ್ಫರ್ಡ್ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣವನ್ನು ಪಡೆದ ಇವರು EHESS ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಕೃತಿಗಳು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಹೋಮ್ ಹೈರಾರ್ಕಿ, ಮ್ಯಾನುವಲ್ ಟು ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಕೃತಿಗಳು. ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೃತಿಗಳು ಭಾರತದ ಸಮಾಜದವನ್ನ ಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದ ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಿಕೊಟ್ಟ ಬಗೆ ಯಾವುದು ಅನ್ನುವುದನ್ನ ನೋಡುವುದು. ಆ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ಅವರ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನಗಳ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ಮಿತಿ, ಸೀಮಿತತೆ ಅಥವಾ ವಿಸ್ತಾರತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಇವುಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾಲಘಟ್ಟದ ಅಧ್ಯಯನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಳವಡಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳಬೇಕಾದ ಅಥವಾ ಅದರ ವಿಮರ್ಶೆಯನ್ನ ಒಳಪಡಿಸಬೇಕಾದಂತ ನೆಲೆಗಳನ್ನ ಕಂಡುಕೊಳ್ಳುವಂತ ಆಶಯದಿಂದ ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಇಂಥದ್ದೊಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷತೆಯನ್ನು ವಹಿಸಿದಂತ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಾದ ಡಿ ವಿ ಪರಮಶಿವಮೂರ್ತಿ ಸರ್ ಅವರನ್ನ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗಿರುವಂತ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರಾದ ಟಿ ಪಿ ವಿಜಯ ಸರ್ ಅವರನ್ನು ಸಹಿತ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳಾಗಿರುವಂತವರು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕೋಕ್ಟೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರು. ಇವರು MA ಮತ್ತು MPhil ಅನ್ನ ಜೆಎನ್ಯು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪೂರ್ಣಗೊಳಿಸಿದರು. PhD ಅನ್ನ ಗುಲ್ಬರ್ಗ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದಿಂದ ಪಡೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 14 ವರ್ಷದ ಬೋಧನಾ ಅನುಭವ ಇರುವಂತ ಇವರು ಜೆಂಡರ್, ಆರೋಗ್ಯ ಮತ್ತು ಶಿಕ್ಷಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಪರಿಣಿತರು ಮತ್ತು ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದಂತ ತಜ್ಞತೆಯನ್ನ ಹೊಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪುಸ್ತಕವೆಂದರೆ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಚುಯಲ್ ಫೌಂಡೇಶನ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೋಶಿಯಾಲಜಿ. ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಅನೇಕ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ, ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ಲೇಖನಗಳನ್ನ ಪ್ರಕಟಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ, ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಬಂಧಗಳನ್ನು ಮಂಡಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅನೇಕ ದೇಶದ ಅನೇಕ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಪೀಠ, ದತ್ತಿನಿಧಿಗಳಿಗೆ ವಿಶೇಷ ಆಹ್ವಾನಿತರಾಗಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಗಳನ್ನ ನೀಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರಜ್ಞರು ಸ್ಥಾಪಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ರಿಯಾಶೀಲವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸೋಷಿಯಾಲಜಿಕಲ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಕ್ರಿಯಾಶೀಲ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾಗಿ RC6 ಅಂಚಿನ ಗುಂಪುಗಳು, ತಳ ಸಮುದಾಯ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಸಂಚಾಲಕರಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯನಿರ್ವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಊರಿನ ಹೊಸಪೇಟೆಯ ಸಖಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸತತ ಒಡನಾಡಿಯಾಗಿರುವಂತ ಇವರು ದೇವದಾಸಿಯನ್ನು ಒಳಗೊಂಡಂತೆ ಅನೇಕ ಅಂಚಿನ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳಿಗೆ ಇದರ ತಜ್ಞರಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಭಾರತದ ಪ್ರಸಿದ್ಧ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಾದಂತ ISS ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಾಲಜಿಕಲ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಯ EC ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದರ ಕೊಡುಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತನ್ನದೇ ಆದ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನ ವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಆಹ್ವಾನವನ್ನು ಒಪ್ಪಿಕೊಂಡು ಈ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡ್ತಿರೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಂತೋಷದ ಸಂಗತಿ. ಈ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕುಪ್ಪೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರನ್ನ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಹೃದಯಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇವೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಯಶಸ್ವಿಗೊಳಿಸಲು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ವಿವಿಧ ನಿಕಾಯಗಳ ಡೀನರು ಸತತ ನನಗೆ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹವನ್ನ ನೀಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಇದನ್ನ ಆಯೋಜಿಸುವ ಅನೇಕ ಆಯಾಮಗಳನ್ನ ಮನವರಿಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿಕಾಯಗಳ ಡೀನರಿಗೆ ಹೃದಯಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗಿರುವಂತ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ವಿಭಾಗಗಳ ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರಿಗೂ, ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಿಗೂ, ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೂ, ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು, ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು, ಕಾಲೇಜಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು, ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ನೆರವನ್ನು ನೀಡ್ತಿರುವ ಗಣಕ ಕೇಂದ್ರದ ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರಾದ ವಿಜೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ ಅವರಿಗೂ, ಶಕುಂತಲಾ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರಿಗೂ ಸಹಿತ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಮೇಡಮ್, ಈ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಆಶಯ ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ ಅವರ ಬರಹಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿಕೊಡುವ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನ ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹೇಗೆ ಅಧ್ಯಯನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಸ್ತರಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ಅವರ ಸೀಮಿತತೆ ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಾಗಿಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಮ್ಮ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ತಮ್ಮ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡ್ಬೇಕು.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Eriswamy ಅವರಿಗೆ. Hello, am I?
Thank you, madam.
Yes. Thank you for the detailed description of me, and I hope I will be able to press my views on Dumont, Louis Dumont. And I also thank the VC Parmeshwar sir for giving me this opportunity. And this has been a wonderful initiation by the university and Dr. Eriswamy, who has, they have created the best academic dialogue and making the students understand about the teaching of some of the important thinkers in our sociological field. And having said that, I would now, as Dr. Eriswamy told, that I will be speaking on Louis Dumont and his contributions to the Indian sociology, the way he studied the caste system in India is something that I would like to look upon. Professor Eriswamy also gave a small introduction of, Louis Dumont, a French sociologist who was also an Indologist who has made significant contributions to understanding the Indian caste system, right? And his works has been emphasized on the importance of the value of hierarchy, rituals involved in it, and the caste system that which is persistent today in Indian society. And he spoke this in the early 60s. And to also to know, understand the more, now I pronounce his name as Louis Dumont, D-U-M-O-N-T. T is silent here. So we call him as Louis Dumont, right? This is how the French word are said. Born in 1911 till 1998, when he passed away, his achievements are incredible in the field of sociology, which are even debated today. And he's been a very towering figure in sociology and anthropology. He has his focus of debate has always been on India and West, and he's known for the use of methodologies in his studies, and his major contributions, if you look at, he has spoken about the homo hierarchies, that is the caste system in India and its implications, where he also talks about the concept of pure and impure, where he also talks about the theories of varnas. And his writing of homo hierarchies is his magnus opum, you can say, which is read vastly by many academicians. He's also, as I said, regarded as an Indologist because his approach to the caste system was based on the written books that were available based on mythology or on Sanskrit literature. He also studied Sanskrit, by the way. And he began his career in the mid-30s. And another sociologist by named Marcel Mauss, who was also a Sanskritist, he was highly influenced by them. And during the World War II, his study was interrupted. He was also jailed taken to prison in Germany, in Hamburg, and there he studied Germany also. So at the end of the World War II, he came back home to his non-academic position, engaged himself in the research, and he used ethnographic details in his study and applied a very holistic approach. As I said, he also learned Sanskrit, and then he had a chance of meeting another professor, Shubring, who was a specialist at that point of time, who studied on Jain studies. And his interest in India grew, which was also generated by his teacher, another sociologist, as I said, Marcel Mauss, and where he took lessons again in Hindi and he took lessons in Hindi and Sanskrit, and he also Tamil, for that matter, because his study was based in Tamil Nadu, and he spent many years from 49 and 50 during that period in Tamil Nadu studying the Kalar group, who were in the middle of the caste in that regional system of caste. And it was interesting to see that he chose to focus on this South India because he believed that it was the encounter of the Aryan-speaking people from the north with the southern Dravidians. And in 1950, his village study, he looked down and he was criticized also for underrating the significance of the villages in India. And but however, the kind of village partnership that was involved combined in understanding the religion, the politics, the history in India. He made an effort and contributed to the field of sociology. But from 51 onwards, he wrote about caste. The presence of caste was everywhere, and he said in 1950, in 55, that it was a token of cultural unity and distinctiveness of India that made him study this. So the fruit of this research that he was doing on was, as I said, the magnum opus book that he wrote, Homo Hierarchus, in French in 66, and then later in 1970, it was translated in English. Dumont returned to to home from India in 51. He went back to Oxford, succeeded M.N. Srinivas Sir, Professor M.N. Srinivas Sir, and he developed also a close relationship with Evans Pritchard. And at the Oxford that he spent his years, he was very critical of the importance of the methodology while studying the, Indian civilization as such. So in 55, he again went back to Paris, took research in the École de Hatis, studied social sciences, and then he declared at the inaugural lecture there that the sociology of India must lie at the confluence of sociology and Indiology together. So the method was dialectical in the sense that although Indiology may provide points of departure, but he arrived, especially the principles derived from it. He spoke about the confrontation by what people actually did, what he observed, and what he read, right? So the fieldwork, however, contributed to his interest in the other interregional comparisons, and he also published research analysis of marriage, kinships, and other terminologies. And his main areas of interest in sociology was of Hinduism, caste, kinship in ancient India, and social political movements in the modern India also. While studying, Louis Dumont also brought in the method of structuralism when he spoke about the caste system. He spoke about the elements that were involved in the methodology, the ideology and structure. He spoke about the ideology of caste in Indology, right? And it's also its assumptions on the unity of Indian civilization. He goes on to say that ideology is something that designates a more or less unified sets of ideas and values, because Indian civilization to him was very specific, had a very specific ideology whose components are, in a binary opposition of the West, like the status, the power, the traditional versus the modern, versus the hierarchy versus again the equality. Pollution against the power, right? Purity and pollution, and the status against power. So this dialect that he was talking about is basis for comparison at the level of global ideology within the specific ideology of caste that he had studied. And then he spoke about the opposite exactly of the West while studying the caste is between the principles of purity and pollution in particular. So apart from the ideology and structure, the notion of hierarchy that he spoke was very important in Dumont's study, because he said hierarchy implied opposition between pure and impure. It also determines the way they are it determines its dialects. And hierarchy also suggested yeah. So according to Dumont, he spoke about a specific ideology, as I said, which were contrast to the West, and then he spoke about the pure and pollution in India. And pure and impure also spoke about how the caste, each in the Varna groups, were treated in terms of purity and pollution. And in the caste, the principle of purity system, in the caste system, the purity encompasses the impure. So for Dumont, the approach of the study of caste system in India provoked a debate as such. So when you see his intensive field work, the methodological approach, or the literature sources that he studied and also published. The first is one of the richest ethnographic accounts of India that we see was ever published, and then was also written in English and dedicated. He dedicated his work to Lévi-Strauss. Dumont's Homo hierarchy, which he wrote in 1970, revived the interest in caste studies in the 70s. He focused on the need of understanding the ideology of caste, which was reflected in all the texts earlier. He advocated the use of ideological and structuralist approach to study the caste system and the village social structure in India. So Dumont talks about the Indian sociology as the specialized branch. That is, he talks about how it stands out, Indology and sociology, for Indology and sociology, where he advocates, he advocates as the right type of mix in understanding the Indian society, because both are, he says, are the prerequisites when you study Indian society. So his mix of Indology and sociology was very important for him. The other area where he also spoke about was stressing on the ideology in molding the human behavior, that is, to bring together sociology and Indology, to understand proper relation between and the classic Indology. Because Dumont and Pocock, they also observed that the first condition for the sound development of sociology in India is found in the establishment of a proper relationship between, as I said, the classical Indology, who who pressed on the text to study the society. And then if you look at the analysis of social change from the cognitive historical viewpoint, which he also spoke about, he spoke about how um, he conceived Indian, society not in terms of the kind of system it is or the kind of relationship that is there in the Varna system, but he also, as a system of ideational or value patterns or cognitive structures, that how we would perceive the West or how the West would perceive India was identified here. So the focus of social change study, according to Louis Dumont, he pressed on the reaction of Indian minds, how we would react to the Western culture, and how it would also impact on the Indian mind, on the individuals, on the freedom, on the democracy, and on the Indian tradition as such, whether you reject or, while reacting, you reject or you accept it. So in in contrast between the Indian and the Western cognitive system, he spoke about the holistic character, right, of the Indian system and the individualistic characteristic of the Western society. So the contrast also poses the nature of, a kind of tension that builds between the traditions versus the modernity in India. If you also look at Dumont's main area of interest and the major works that he wrote was Hierarchy, Marriage, Alliance in South India. He wrote about religion, politics, history in India, and the Homo hierarchus that he spoke about. The book that he wrote and which is read highly even today. So let me now talk about particularly the Homo hierarchus, the caste system, the implications of the caste system, which is an unusual work of Dumont. How did he design and execute, or how did he conceptualize the whole while studying the Indian society? So this is a complete work that helps us to access based on the ethnographic data on caste. So the work is different from others because it has the cardinal explanatory principle based on hierarchies, right? And he built a new model here. So hierarchy is said to distinguish, according to Dumont, the Indian society from the modern societies whose fundamental social principles is equality, which he did not see equality in the hierarchy of the Varnas. So the major theme of this is anticipated, like any hierarchy, like any equalitarian systems, or it is opposed by those who see it upon themselves as it is very disadvantageous because it doesn't talk about equality and how it advocates for few and for them who the caste benefits, right? So now those who are low in the hierarchical system universally see that it is a very disadvantageous to themselves, and or they also see as a manner of how it is applied to themselves. So in any given social hierarchy, you can see that the elites and the struggles against the circumstances that is there in the society, and how the struggle between the oppressed and the oppressors, basically the struggle of the oppressors, right? And this he found that was very evident and present in the Indian society. Now, there are few assumptions, right, that make it very specific of Louis Dumont's arguments. One is that his assumption that there is a clear and consistent universal fundamental disparity between the traditional and the small simpler societies like the Indian society and the modern ones like the French or the American or the British societies. Now here Dumont finds the traditional societies are characterized by the conception of a collective nature of man. He talks about how within the Varna system people work, and how it is also benefiting each groups. So collectively they are working towards each other, and the exact nature, he says, is which is very social in nature rather than the individual goals. And thus he says that hierarchy, by hierarchy, which means the rituals hierarchy based on the purity or pollution, it talks about how the individual goals are dismissed more for the social goals. And then there is also a notion that he talks about of power and economic and political factors that are distinct from the nature of caste and that ritual hierarchy, which is very central to the caste system in India. It also depends on power and independence. So the power status opposite, many criticized, is a false dichotomy of the context of caste, and these are very inseparable, right? So the notion of caste occurs only in India, and that it is not subject to cross-cultural comparison, as many observed when he spoke about the homo hierarchy. The caste system, according to Louis Dumont, was primarily ideology of the caste system, and his understanding of caste, it laid a lot of emphasis on the attributes of caste. That is why he is also put in a category of those following the attributional approach to his study of the caste in India, to the caste system. So for him, caste was a set of relationship, a relationship which had economic involvement, which had political, which had kinship involvement, and they all sustained by certain values which were mostly religious in nature, is what Dumont is talking about. So he says that caste is not a form of stratification, but a special form of inequality, right? And he says, and the essence has to be analyzed by the sociologists. And Dumont identifies a hierarchy as the essential value underlining the caste system, which he says is also supported by the Hindus in India. He starts with the definition of caste and says that it divides the whole society into a larger number of hereditary groups. And then he also goes on to distinguish from one another and connected together by three characteristics. One, he says, the separation on the basis of rules of the caste in matters of marriage, how endogamy is persists here, and the marriage and contact, whether direct or indirect, whether people apart from marriage, whether they the kind of food that they eat, whether they eat it together or they eat it separately, right? Or how they mix up within themselves in the society was what was observed. And then he also spoke about the interdependent on work in the Varna system, the division of labor, each group having a theory or by tradition, profession also, by which every member can depart only within certain limits. Even today, when you talk about how whoever coming from the untouchable castes, in spite of the education or in spite of the gain of knowledge or the kind of job they do and get into the higher status, this is something that is observed and appreciated only at a on a face value, but really looking at times it also people understand not about the intelligence or the work or the merit involved, but they finally come back to the caste of what the person belongs to. Because even today, when you see the president, an untouchable becoming a president, they say we have a Dalit, a president or the chief minister, but you don't take just the name and say that this one is so and so is the president or the chief minister. So then again, looking at how the contact, direct or indirect, or the division of labor, how in theory or by tradition, profession from which their member can depart, he said, was only with certain limits, but the caste remains with them throughout. So finally, when talking about caste or status, or hierarchy, he ranks groups as relatively superior or inferior to one another, which to some extent is followed even today in our country, because when I teach at my university in Bangalore University, I hear stories about caste, how it is so rigid. You go 40 kilometers or 50 kilometers away from Bangalore, and you see this system prevailing even now, and how the students and the members of untouchable caste are not allowed to enter the temples. They don't mix up with the local general public, in the villages. The village festivals are separated. One day is given to the higher caste people, and a separate date is given to the lower caste people to celebrate the festivals. So that being the status even today, we don't see much a difference, or we don't, though things have changed, but I still see it is very specific in few places and not in the rural villages of India, definitely. So Dumont's view on the definition of caste also indicates the characteristics where he talks about India is one composed of many small territories and caste. And there he says every caste is also limited to a particular and a definite geographic area. So even today you see in the villages, they have a particular area where they live, and they don't mix up with the rest of the people in that villages, right? So they stay a few kilometers away from the main village. Marrying outside one's own caste is also not possible in the caste system that he spoke about. Though it happens today, they do get married, but honor killing and you know still takes place, and it's still not very open and pleasant to talk about somebody from the higher caste getting married to a lower caste boy or a girl. So, in fact, when highlighting the state of mind, he talks about how it is expressed by the various situations of caste in India. So he calls the caste system as a system of ideas based on values, and his analysis again is based on a single principle, that is opposition to pure and impure. So his opposition here underlines hierarchy, right? He's talking about the means of superiority, which is pure, which is inferior. This principle also underlines the kind of a separation which he means pure and the impure must be kept separate and not to be mixed. So he felt that the study of the caste was useful for the knowledge of India, right? In the sense, it is very important, especially for the sociologist, a task for sociologist, where he says you need to understand the ideology of caste, and you need to reflect on the classical texts that were available. You need to look into the historical examples. And he also advocated the use of Indological and structuralist approach to the study of caste, right? As I said earlier, when you study the village social structure in India. Now, he looked at the Indian sociology as a specialized branch, which where he also advocates at the right of mixed prerequisites to understand the Indian sociology. As I said earlier, the Indology and sociology, right? From his perspective, if you look at in his Homo hierarchus, he has built a model of Indian civilization, which is based on the non-competitive ritual hierarchical system. That is, every hierarchy has its own rituals, and they don't compete with each other, but based on their values and the hierarchy involved in it. He analyzed the caste system on the classical literature, right? So for him, the concept of pure and impure, he looked at he basically had two questions. One, why is this distinction applied to hereditary groups? That is the pure and the impure. And if it accounts for the contrast between the Brahmins and untouchables, can it account equally for the division of society into larger number of groups. So he was looking at the subdivisions. While studying the subdivisions within the caste, he did not have any. He did not answer these questions, right? But the opposite has always been extreme, in the sense the Brahmins and untouchables, where he says the Brahmins assigned with the priestly functions occupied top rank in the hierarchy, as we all know, and how they were considered as pure according, and compared the other castes as untouchable and impure, and how this also segregated outside the caste, outside the villages, who were not allowed to even, draw water or go to the temple or attend, any functions of the upper caste, and they were not invited. So the same, or draw even water from the common areas. And this, he said, yes, the Brahmins did so because of the notion of pure that existed in the caste. And then he also says that they did not have any the lower castes did not have any access to temples, and they suffered, a lot of other disabilities, which they did not have any kind of resources, were not given for them to explore their skills, or their their whole as an individual, since it was so much restricted to them. So untouchability was considered, he said that the situation was somewhat changed since the Gandhian agitation and when India attained independence. And how much it has I got a message that I was not audible.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅವ್ರದ್ದೇನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಅನಿಸ್ತಿದೆ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಕ್ಲಾರಿಟಿ ಇದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವಾಯ್ಸ್.
Okay. So I'll continue. Yeah. So he also said that since Gandhi's agitation and the struggle of independence has changed things in India. Though untouchability is banned in India, we still see a lot of cases. We can argue on that. We see a lot of atrocities happening on that. And we also see how the atrocity cases get influenced, where most of them go unnoticed and unsolved, right? But with all this, he also spoke about how they did not have access to temples, and facing other disabilities for not having resources in the society. So he went on to, he was a little inspired by Gandhiji and untouchability, where he called the untouchables as Harijans, or son of Hari. That he says the creatures of God or Vishnu. But for untouchables, he says they are specialized in impure tasks, again, that we also see in some few places even today. If you look at the Safai Karamcharis, or all these people, for karmikers who come, who work in the cities throughout the country, they all come from the SC background, who work in impure tasks, as defined by Dumont. So he's highlighting the temporary and permanent impurity is something that led to the attribution of massive and permanent impurity to some categories of people, right? So in larger areas of the world, death, birth, and other things do affected. People get affected by it, and there are newly um, mothers after deliver. You also see how the church or how their own castes and how their own religions also treat the mothers as impure, the girl menstruating as impure, even in today's society, and how carrying herself with in the rigidity of the caste system and society, how things make difficult for her is something that even Dumont observed then. So untouchables, as Dumont said, especially in India, affected by the kind of event treated as impure. Indians themselves identified this impurity. He says Indians themselves have identified this impurity and that of untouchables. And, there are many sociologists and academicians who have spoken about the untouchability and the kinds of purity that are involved. How in the Varna system, things in the morning, the ritual habits of having your bath, talks about hygiene and how there are also considered as pure and impure skill, which is purer, than any other metals or materials that are involved in the society, because there are some the priest hood, which the Brahmins are into these professionals. For them, this becomes a very pure than the gold or cotton or anything that is the best form of work for them that is highlighted in the caste system. So these objectives, what you see, has received, new kind of, they have made it as their own self. They have made it as their own family. They have made it as their family, or for others who are impure, and how these two groups separate within the society which they have created, and how Dumont also feels in this Varna that one cannot speak of the castes without mentioning the Varnas, to which the Hindus have always or frequently attributed the caste to themselves, right? So India, he says, has traditionally been India has traditionally been an hierarchical a society with colors or estates. The four categories are distinguished based on the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, right? And there is one more category, as we all know, the untouchables, who are outside the classification of the system. And Dumont also maintains that many of the Indologists confuse the Varna with caste, right? So he says it's mainly because the classical literature which was available was concerned almost entirely with the Varnas. So caste and Varnas are to be understood with relationship of hierarchy and power is what Dumont talks about. So by his interpretation, it means caste was different from other forms of social stratification through the disjunction of ritual status and secular that we see in the political and the economic sphere, or where power is available in the same social system. And he also placed down the significance of social change in the colonial and contemporary times. He did not caste lose its political significance in the late 18th and 19th centuries, is what he also discusses. As for what was happening in the 20th century, he spoke about the emergence of intercaste competitiveness, in the structure of, in the place of a structure of independent India as a departure from the tradition. Yes, we have seen things happening, changing, past, after independence and till today. And even he regarded this as a behavioral change of people rather than the radical transformation of a system of whole. So there are people, few who believe in this, who don't believe in this. But if you look at the system as such, the hierarchy does exist. It becomes difficult for the untouchables, especially in the rural India, to get all the resources, for their survivals. And even after that, surviving in this competitive and meritorious world, they are still taunted and vague, slangs are used against them many times, where we see on the Instagrams some Bollywood actor talking and using inappropriate words when he talks about a particular caste people, right? Or when a minister talks about a particular, in a particular way, while addressing the untouchables in India, which becomes very offensive and criminal in nature, right? So these, as Dumont says, were explicitly recognized by intercaste competitiveness. He regarded it as, a few people changed or there was a behavioral change, but the radical transformation that he thought would happen in the country, in this caste system as a whole, at the level of values or principles, couldn't be achieved much, right? As even Professor Madan has spoken about and presumed that Dumont analysis is an exercise in deductive logic, right? So Louis Dumont is talking about or discusses significant changes in the caste system that he's seeing. And he talks about the traditional interdependence of caste replaced by a universe of different self-sufficient, identical competition in one another, where he calls this as a substantialization of caste, which in turn sometimes it is interdependent, which it is self-sufficient in nature. Despite all the factors making for change, the most important general form of change that has taken in contemporary times is one of a mixture or combination of traditional and modern features in the Indian society, is what he explains in his book of Hierarchy. And for the work he studied in India, he was also criticized heavily, right? In spite of writing many articles and books on the sociology of India, he was criticized for demonstrating or understanding the hierarchy of Indian society in a very critically faulted manner of the term that he used in the caste system, right? And many of them say that is based on the traditional Indian texts. So the features of the caste system, as it is projected by Louis Dumont, seems to be, they say, it's unchanging. So, but if you look at the reality, the caste system to some extent has changed in various forms, especially after the independence and the constitution and the rights that they have got. But Dumont also sees to characterize the Indian society as almost stagnant because he is more emphasizing on the integrative function of the caste system. So that is again criticized by many scholars. And then they also look at, critics especially look at the work that is based on traditional Indian text, featuring caste, which has not changed. And Yogendra Singh, Professor Yogendra Singh, also spoke about Dumont's approach to sociology. Rules out, he says that it rules out a study of the a lot of crucial social facts of Indian life, organization, whether you talk about the Indian system, industrial system, or whether you talk about the agrarian social movement. So it rules out many variables from being introduced into the sociology of development, right? And saying that it is a stagnant society. So Dumont is more considered with the system integration and system maintenance than with change or conflict, or how do you improve it. So Professor Yogendra Singh talks about Dumont as a functionally equivalent concept. He says that there is a paradigm that remains hidden from public view. There's something that has been hidden in the study of the Indian sociology with regard to the caste and the homo hierarchies, where which the study has led to displacement or a focus. And then he also goes on to say that there is not much of a scope for comparison or abstract generalizations in the study of sociology. And with regards to his purity and impurity, which is highlighted by Louis Dumont again, is also not very universal in nature, right? So again, there is criticisms which talk about there in tribal societies, status is not anchored in purity, but it is in the sacredness that they believe in that tribal, their own societies. With many of criticisms, Louis Dumont still holds an important position in Indian sociology because the debate of Indian social reality, which is based on the caste, based on Dumont's homo hierarchies, it has represented an outstanding contribution, whether we all agree on his viewpoint or not. So if I have to conclude what Louis Dumont has contributed to the Indian caste system, which is very essential, a value undertaking the caste system. And the approach to the caste is basically based on ideological and structuralist, as I said. But to him, the understanding has been traced mainly from ancient texts, and therefore we consider him as a person, or we consider him as cognitive, historical, and Indologist, who has given preference on these attributes while studying the Indian uh, society. Why I think I have done enough justice to Louis Dumont's approach to Indian caste system and his homo hierarchus, based on his ancient texts that was available in the Indian society. And he saw what the text said, and he also saw what the reality was in the Indian society when he spoke about the caste system. So I thank Dr. Eriswamy sir for giving me this opportunity, and I thank all the participants who have silently listened to what I have spoken, though I could not talk to them during this interaction, the lecture, but I am guessing all of them are the students of SK University, and all belong to the sociology stream.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಮೇಡಮ್, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ವೆರಿ ಮಚ್. ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರು ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕೇಳ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಅನ್ಸಿದ್ರೆ, ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆನೋ ಅಥವಾ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕನ್ಸಿದ್ರೆ ತಾವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಓಕೆ, ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ
ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಸರ್,
ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು, ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
ಹೇಳಿ.
I was one question, madam. Who is the first introduce the Varna system, madam?
ಹಲೋ
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು,
ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್.
ಹೇಳಿಯಪ್ಪ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸರಿ ಏನ್ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕ್ವಶನ್. ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಆ ವಿಷಯ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನ ಕೇಳಿ.
That person is asked about who is introduced Varna system for the first time.
Oh,
Ma'am, this is Rashmi, your student, ma'am.
Oh, hi, Lakshmi. You were here in Bangalore University?
No, ma'am. Rashmi Mosha Krutma, 2009 batch, ma'am, in Bijapur University, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Nice to see. I'm not
With
able to see you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If you can put on the video, probably I can see.
Yes, ma'am. I don't think that you will remember me because I have changed a lot. I will collect your phone number and I will talk to you, ma'am, with video call, ma'am.
Okay, then fine. Okay, they wanted to know who started the Varna system. Ade sir, correct?
Yes, ma'am. For the first time.
Varna, okay. See, the Varna system, as we know, also known as the caste system, it is a social structure that we all know, right? And this originated in the ancient India. And you will also see the mentioning of the Varna system in the Rig Vedas. So we also have many theories for this. There is a Western theory that suggests the Aryans, the immigrants from Central Asia introduced the Varna system around, I think, 1500 BC. And they differentiated themselves from the local people called as dasas based on the skin color. And then we also have the evolution of the Varna system theory. The Rig Veda spoke about the first Varna system, and it also described how there has been, it spoke about the Purusha is made up from the 4 Varnas, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras. So it does go back to our ancient texts where even Rig Veda talks about it.
Okay, madam.
I hope you got the answer.
ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಯಾಟಿಸ್ಫೈ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಸೊ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾರನ್ನ ಕೇಳದಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸುವ ಸಮಯ.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ
ಮೇಡಮ್, ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ರಾಜಣ್ಣ ಜೆಟ್ಟಿ, ಕನ್ನಡ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಸೋಷಿಯಾಲಜಿ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ಓಕೆ, ಹೇಳಿ.
ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ಮಂಡನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ತುಂಬಾ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಮೇಡಮ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು
ಮೇಡಮ್. ನಮ್ದು ಡೌಟ್ ಇದೆ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ಹೇಳಿ.
ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ ಜಾತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಮಾಡಿರುವ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಚಿಂತಕರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಅವರು ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಚಿಂತನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಗೆ ಪರಿಗಣಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಹೇಗೆ ವಿಸ್ತರಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮೇಡಮ್?
ಸರ್, ಇದರ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ ಸರ್?
ಹಾ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮಾಂಟ್ considered Ambedkar writings on caste. If considered, how they are interpreted.
Okay. Did Louis Dumont consider Ambedkar?
Ambedkar writings on caste.
Okay. Ambedkar writing on caste. See, he does not mention anywhere about Ambedkar, right? He spoke about the caste system after studying the caste in Tamil Nadu, the Palakas, and a few group in Gorakhpur of Uttar Pradesh. While studying his field work, what he came across and what he wrote, studying through the ancient texts, is what he has written about the caste. But I don't think he has spoken about as particularly Ambedkar and his views on caste.
Okay, thank you, madam.
But there is a chapter in one of his writings where he talks about Ambedkar in the contemporary trends, right? And he also talks about how he felt for Ambedkar for being born in this caste system. And for Ambedkar, when he spoke about caste, he believed it was very problematic, right? And he went beyond being a division of labor, what Louis Dumont talks about. So he speaks beyond division of labor, Ambedkar. And for him, the only instrument was, for Ambedkar, was government initiatives, right? Reservation, which he spoke about in his Annihilation of Caste in India. And changing or bringing a change with regards to what he wrote even in the constitution for a radical change in the caste system. But he talking or he studying his views is not mentioned anywhere.
ಹೌದು ಮೇಡಮ್. ನಾನು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನಾನು ಒಂದೆರಡು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಸೇರಿಸ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ.
ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್.
ಆ ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಅವರ ಜಾತಿ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಬರಹಗಳನ್ನ ಮತ್ತು ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡಿಮೋ ಅವರ ಹೋಮ್ ಹೈರಾರ್ಕಿನ ಎರಡನ್ನೂ ಆ ಆ, ಓದಿದಾಗ ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡುಮೋ ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಬರಹಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಗಣಿಸೇ ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಕೃತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. ಅವ್ರು ಬರೀ ಸಿಂಪತಿ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ, ಒಂದ್ ಎಲ್ದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀತಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ.
ಅಂದ್ರೆ
ಬಟ್
ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಒಂದು ಮೆಥಡಲಾಜಿಕಲ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂತ ಇನ್ಸೆನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ಸಮುದಾಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಎಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿನ ಕೋಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಅದರ ಉಗಮ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆವನ್ನ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮೆಟಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ವಿವರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಜಾತ್ ಪಾತ್ ತೋಡಕ್ ಮಂಡಲಕ್ಕೆ ಸಮ್ಮೇಳನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ಜಾತಿ ನಿರ್ಮೂಲನೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬರೆಯುವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ಬೇಸ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ.
ಅನಿಲೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್.
ಆದ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರು ಎಲ್ಲಿನೂ ಸಹಿತ ಲೂಯಿಸ್ ಡ್ಯೂಮೋ ಮತ್ತು ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರು ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಬರಹಗಳನ್ನು ಒಬ್ಬ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸೋಷಿಯಾಲಜಿಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿನೇ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತಂದು ಎಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಅದನ್ನ ವಿಸ್ತರಿಸಕ್ಕೂ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡಲ್ಲ ಯಾರು.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. ಮತ್ತೆ ಅದು ಆ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋದನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲ ಬಿಡಿ ಸರ್.
ಹೌದು, ಖಂಡಿತ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಮೇಡಮ್, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು, ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯ್ತು. ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸೋಣ, ವಂದನಾರ್ಪಣೆ ಸಮಯ. ಕನ್ನಡ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ವಿಭಾಗ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರ ಅಸ್ತಿತ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅನೇಕರು ಕಾರಣೀಭೂತರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೊನೆಯ ದಿನ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನ ನೆನ್ಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ದೂರ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ MA ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಆನಂತರ MA PhD ಶುರುವಾಯ್ತು. ಆಗ ಶುರುವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದಂತವರು ಮಲ್ಲಿಕಾ ಗಂಟಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರು ಕುಲಪತಿ ಆದ ಅವಧಿಯನ್ನು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಆನಂತರ ಪರಮಶಿವಮೂರ್ತಿ ಸರ್ ಅವರು ಬಂದ ನಂತರ ಇದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಹೊಸ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಅಸ್ತಿತ್ವ ಬಂತು. ಸೊ ಇದಕ್ಕೂ ಮತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಶುರುವಾಗೋದಕ್ಕೂ ಸಹಿತ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ KM ಮೈತ್ರಿ ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ಅವರು ಇದ್ರ ಹಿಂದೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳ ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಕೆಲಸವಾದ ನಂತರ ಇವತ್ತೇನೇನ್ ನಾವು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಹಿಂದಿನ ಸೂಚನೆ, ಬೆಂಬಲ ಮತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಶಕ್ತಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ DV ಪರಮಶಿವಮೂರ್ತಿ ಸರ್ ಅವರು. ಅವರಿಗೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷತೆಯನ್ನು ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಲಸಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗಿದ್ದು ದೇಶ ಮಾತನಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಅವರಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ವಿಭಾಗ ಯಾವುದೇ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಆಡಳಿತಾತ್ಮಕವಾಗಿ ಬೆಂಬಲಿಸುವಂತವರು, ಅದನ್ನ ಪರಿಹರಿಸುವಂತವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರು. ಕುಲಸಚಿವರು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಹೇಗಾಯ್ತು ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೇನಾರ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಬೇಕಾ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅವರು ಸಹಿತ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ. ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರು ಜೈನ್ ಆದ್ರು ಮತ್ತು ಸುದೀರ್ಘವಾಗಿ ತಮ್ಮ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನ ಮಂಡನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ತಮ್ಮದೇ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಅವರ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ಆ ಬರಹಗಳ ಮಿತಿ, ಅದ್ರೊಳಗಡೆ ಯಾವ್ಯಾವ ಸಂಗತಿಗಳಿದಾವೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡಿದಂತ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುಧಾ ಕೊಕ್ಕೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ, ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಕಳೆದ 4 ದಿನಗಳ ಹಿಂದಿನಿಂದನೂ ಅನೇಕ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆನ್ನೆಲುಬಾಗಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೊದಲನೇ ದಿನ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀಪತಿ CG ಸರ್ ಅವರು, 2ನೇ ದಿನ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಬಿತಾ ಅವರು, 3ನೇ ದಿನ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ನಾಯ್ಕ್ ಅವರು, 4ನೇ ದಿನ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸೌಕತ್ ಅಜಮ್ ಸರ್ ಅವರು. ಅವರಿಗೂ ಸಹಿತ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ.
ನಾನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಸರ್.
ಹೌದು ಮೇಡಮ್, ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ನೀವು ಇದಾಗಿದ್ರಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಇಡೀ ಈ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸದ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಜೂಮ್ ನೊಂದಿಗೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಇರುವಂತ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು, ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದ ಆಸಕ್ತರು, ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಬೆಂಬಲಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹಿತ ನಾವು ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ಮತ್ತು ತಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಬಲ ಸದಾ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಂತಂದೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ವಿಭಾಗದ ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥನಾಗಿ ತಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಬೆಂಬಲಿಸಿ ಅಂತ ಕೋರಿಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗವು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಒಳಗಿನ ಶಕ್ತಿ ನಮಗೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಬೆನ್ನೆಲುಬಾಗಿ ನಿಂತಿದೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ವಿವಿಧ ನಿಕಾಯದ DNR ಮತ್ತು ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರು ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು. ಸೊ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹಿತ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೂ, ಪತ್ರಿಕೋದ್ಯಮದ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೂ, ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೂ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ವಿಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ತುಂಬಾ ಆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಅದು ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್, ನಾವು ಹೊಸ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗಿಗೆ ಬಂದ್ವಿ, ಸಪರೇಟ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ವಿ. ಅವಾಗಿನಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದಕ್ಕೂ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಹಗಲಿರುಳು ದುಡಿತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸ್ತಿರುವ ಇತರ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳನ್ನ, ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳನ್ನ ಮತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳನ್ನ ಸಹಿತ ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳನ್ನ, ಹಿರಿಯರನ್ನ, ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರನ್ನ ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹುದ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾರ್ಯನಿರ್ವಹಿಸುತ್ತಿರುವಂತ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳನ್ನ ನೆನೀತಾ ಮುಂದಿನ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗವನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೊಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಶಕ್ತಿಗೊಳಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಸಹಕಾರ, ಬೆಂಬಲ, ಸೂಚನೆಗಳು ತಮಗೆ ಬರಲಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗ ಮುಕ್ತವಾಗಿದೆ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಸಮಾಜ ಮತ್ತು ಭಾರತದ ಸಮಾಜದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಪ್ರಸ್ತಾವನೆಗಳು ಬಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದು ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಇರಲಿ, ಕಾರ್ಯಾಗಾರ ಇರಲಿ, ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣ ಇರಲಿ, ಸ್ವತಃ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ಗಳಿರ್ಲಿ, ನಾವು ಮುಕ್ತವಾಗಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಯಾರು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗವನ್ನ ಸಂಪರ್ಕಿಸಬಹುದು, ತಮ್ಮ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ನಾವು ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಬೇಸ್ದಾಗಿ ಸಮಾಜಶಾಸ್ತ್ರವನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೊಂದಿಷ್ಟು ವೃದ್ಧಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೂ ಅಗತ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ವಿಭಾಗ ಸಮಕಾಲೀನಗೊಳ್ದ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಅಸ್ತಿತ್ವ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸಮಕಾಲೀನ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಜನತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರು, ಕನ್ನಡಿಗತ್ವ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕವೇ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಸಂಪರ್ಕಿಸ್ಬೋದು, ತಮ್ಮ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಮಂಡಿಸ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ, ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನು ಸ್ಮರಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ, ಎಲ್ಲರ ಬೆಂಬಲವನ್ನ ನಿರೀಕ್ಷಿಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಮೇಡಮ್.
Thank you, sir. And I should congratulate you and your department and all the faculty members for doing such a academic, for taking this initiatives. And I wish you all the best for your future academic endeavors. And good luck to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
ವಿರೂಪಾಕ್ಷ ಅವರೇ, ವಿರೂಪಾಕ್ಷ್
ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್.
ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ.
ಹಾ ಸರ್, ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.